Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for staying the course and joining us here this afternoon. I know the sun is shining and the bar is calling, so it takes a certain amount of commitment to stay, so I appreciate that. I think you're going to be pretty excited about particularly what Ben has to say about his journey, so I'm sure we'll make it a good use of your hour. So first of all, my role basically over the last 24 months has been working with our largest corporate customers from across the globe and helping them migrate to the cloud. And I guess, for a startup, it's a pretty much of a no-brainer. It's, why wouldn't I use cloud? Whereas for enterprises, as we all know, it's a much more complex decision. And I think, key to that decision really comes the financials. There is obvious benefits around cloud computing, but what does it look like in my context? What does it look like when I have a legacy estate? What does it look like when I have multi-year outsourcing contracts and existing investments? So as we've pivoted over the last, certainly 12 months, we've started to look more and more around how we can help customers who have existing investments in technology to migrate faster. If we go back to reInvent 2015 last year, I think that was really a watershed moment for AWS in the enterprise. I think up until then, AWS is probably seen as not ready for the enterprise, certainly not ready for mainstream enterprise. But on that event, we had two speakers. One, we had the CIO of Capital One, Rob Alexander, say, you're more secure in public cloud than we are in our own data center, and we have thousands of developers consuming the platform natively. And then secondly, we had Jim Fowler, the CIO of GE, stand up and say, cloud is no longer an experiment. We are committed to moving 9,000 applications into AWS over the next number of years. I think, when the market heard that statement, that was really a game changer for us. And since then, really, the message I've been hearing from customers is not if we should move, it's how we should move and how can we move faster. And really, the genesis of today's session is all around helping you address that challenge. So I'm going to take you through some of the concepts that we've been trying to develop over the last, 9 months. And then I'm going to introduce Ben, who's going to talk about his story and how he moved it from that experiment that Jim Fowler referenced into this inevitability where AWS is acknowledged as a partner of GE's for the next 140 years. So he'll take you through that story, and then I'll wrap it up with some, hopefully, call to actions and kind of key takeaways. So patterns for enterprise adoption, we have lots of different conversations with lots of different customers every day. But really what we're seeing is they're coming down to two key themes. One is, how do I remediate technology debt? So how do I get out of my data center business? How do I move away from multi-year outsourcing contracts? How do I move to an elastic cost base? How do I reduce the inherent risk that exists in my business by the way I run IT today? So, there's a big focus on that one, which I'm sure you're aware of. And then secondly, how do I develop an innovation factory? So whether it's mobile, IoT, big data and analytics, digital, it's how I get closer customer centricity. So how do I get closer to my customer and make more informed business decisions about my customer and provide, deliverables and solutions for my customers that they actually need. And a lot of that is around culture. So we speak a lot about the culture of Amazon and how we've moved from being a bookseller to being, what, as I acknowledged yesterday, the fastest growing technology company to reach $10 billion in revenue ever. To obviously pursuing perpendicular lines of business that from the outside are seen to be completely unrelated. So things like DevOps, things like the two pizza teams. So a lot of discussions around how you can create an innovation culture underpinned by a technology capability obviously provided by AWS. So the focus of today's session really will be around probably the remediate technical debt side of it. How do we help you? Because it's not really one or the other. What people are realizing as well is we can't have a workload. Take this off. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for that. I think we've got some challenges here. One sec. Just give us 1 sec. Got me? That better? Good stuff. Never a dull moment. Cool. Okay, where was I? So yeah, so as I was saying, you know, it comes down to a platform conversation. So it's not one or the other. You struggle to have an innovation factory when you still have a legacy cost base and a pretty static, you know, technology infrastructure. So, you know, that's great, and people understand. I think there's a broad understanding in every corporate. Paul Migliorini referenced yesterday around 48% of all infrastructure spending will be in the public cloud by 2020. So I think everybody gets it that we're moving towards a world that's predominantly public cloud, but very few people are able to realistically quantify what that looks like. So how much is it going to cost me? How long will it take? What the return will be? What benefits will it deliver to my organization? And everybody struggles with that. And I think we at Amazon, you know, have struggled with that historically as well. And probably some of the tools we've had historically haven't helped bridge that gap. So in a lot of cases, you guys look like this guy, you know, and not surprisingly, you're reluctant to take that leap unless you have, you know, a really visionary leader like a Jim Fowler or a Rob Alexander who totally, you know, just inherently understand technology is core to their business. You're not going to get someone who's going to actually jump off because from a pure ROI perspective, they can't make it stack up. So really today we'll dig into hopefully help bridge some of that gap. You know, the next thing is it's not a binary. So you don't, you know, it's not will I move to the cloud or won't I move to the cloud. It's also, you know, there are many different ways you can embrace cloud. You know, not everybody's going to be on the far right-hand side here where they want to be the Netflix, you know, serverless architectures everywhere, embracing services like Lambda. In a lot of cases, depending on what your appetite is, depending on what your technical capability is, you might only be, you know, halfway up that graph. You might only be using AWS, you know, to its not to 100% capability, but that might be fine for you. So what you need to decide as well is where you want to be on that graph and what level of investment you want to make, depending on where you want to get to. So before I dive into the economics of mass migration, I just want to step through, you know, what are the key benefits categories around cloud? Because, you know, I think, you know, in my role, I spend a lot of time looking at business cases developed by either customers or large partners of ours, and pretty much every one of them fails to fully articulate the cloud value prop and probably doesn't accurately represent what it should look like. And you know, in a lot of cases, you know, we're evolving our understanding of that as well. So I just want to dive into the key categories before we talk about mass migration. So first, operational costs. So again, you heard at the keynote yesterday, 10x bigger than the other 14 players in the Magic Quadrant put together. You know, Gartner recently said that the public cloud is 20% of all virtual machines on the globe, and 19% odd of that is AWS. So obviously that scale gives us leverage in our supply chain. So there's benefits there, and we obviously pass them on to our customers per the 51 price reductions since 2006. The ability to match supply and demand. So, you know, the traditional data centers, best case, 30% utilized. If you run your AWS environment well and you manage it well and you embrace concepts like cost optimization, there's an opportunity to really right-size your demand in line with your supply. The third one, I think, reinvention is continuous. So anyone who was here last year, Glenn Gore, who delivered the keynote this morning, did another keynote last year, and he spoke about this concept of, you know, it's not just cost reduction or price cuts that drive cost out. It's new services. So, for example, new instances, more bang for your buck on existing instances. New services like Lambda, ECS, EBS, that can totally change the way you architect your solution and have significant cost savings to your IT environment. So that's another one that people often miss. You know, on a pathway to optionality. So, you know, we're not going to ask you to sign multi-year deals. 722 new features or feature enhancements last year, you get access to them out of the box. You know, there is no commercial commitment here. So you have an opportunity to embrace whatever is that, you know, the best course of action for you at that point in time, as opposed to be stuck to a decision you made 2, 3, 5 years ago. And obviously an elastic cost base. Everyone has this utopian solution where, you know, IT is no longer a black box of costs that sits as an overhead somewhere, and people get an arbitrary charge back at the end of the year and don't really understand why or how, to this point where they can pull a lever and impact their cost base today. And as soon as you start doing that, and we've seen this with our, you know, the likes of Suncorp, GE, etc. As soon as you put the power in the hands of the budget owner around IT, it completely changes their mindset. You know, that lean mindset is absolutely critical to taking cost out of your business. So the next one, workforce productivity. So we talk a lot about automation on Amazon. How do you automation really is what drives a huge amount of the cost savings. You know, Netflix has been very public around, consuming 37% of internet bandwidth at peak with tens of engineers. And we talked yesterday, exec summit, about Airbnb, 400,000 rooms per night with 5 engineers. Yes, the enterprise is different, but I think the point is that automation can have a step change in how you do things today. So humans are fallible and they're expensive. The less human interaction you have in your operations, the better. The other one is developer productivity. So anyone who's seen our IDC report from last year, where we went out and interviewed 20 large corporates from across the globe, we talk about 52% saving as a result of developer productivity. So that's obviously reduced rework, reduced waiting time, and just benefiting from the developer toolset that we have. So the third one is cost avoidance. So obviously, you no longer have hardware refresh programs that you need to enact. You no longer have maintenance programs that you need to go after. And to some extent, they are factored into our cost base. But what people often forget is the human cost and the opportunity cost associated with these. Because these refresh programs take time and effort of your people, of your internal IT resources, or your internal IT budget. So there's an opportunity cost where they could be doing something that's more value-adding to your business, instead of just trying to retain the status quo and basically standing still. Operational resilience. Again, people hold the cloud to a very high level of rigor around security and resilience and durability, and that's absolutely the way it should be. But when people are honest, there's absolutely no doubt that their existing infrastructure is not meeting that bar. And I think here what you get is this level of this reduced level of risk built in. So obviously S3, our simple storage service, 11 nines of durability just out of the box. Again, DR on AWS, a very cost-efficient way to do DR at enterprise scale. And the final one, business agility. And this is obviously a very overused term and can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But really, it's being able to pivot and respond to your customer needs or the market dynamics in a way that's fast and responsive without having a legacy associated with your business. So just creating this inertia. And we see that whether that's M&A activity. So GE obviously have their own around Alstom and GE Capital, and Ben might talk a bit about that. We have a good case study up online around Hess and what they've done around their ability to shorten the transitional services agreement around their divestiture recently. And then obviously as well, there's this whole idea of new market entry and being able to explore new market possibilities and reduce the pace of experimentation, or reduce the cost of experimentation, increase the pace. So again, that's a big one that's often not really quantified. So so the question I guess you want to ask is, are we factoring all of these things into our business case when we do a true cloud business case? So AWS TCO support to date, really it's been this. I mean, most of you who are on the journey have probably seen this. It's our TCO Calculator. It's online, awstcocalculator.com. Go and have a look. And it's a useful tool. It's a useful arm's length tool to give you an idea of what your infrastructure environment today might look like on AWS. But really, there are a lot of factors, I guess, that you would need to do if you look at developing a mass migration program that aren't captured in here, and the benefits that I've just talked about. Obviously, a lot of them aren't captured in here. So let's go through what's missing. So for a start, infrastructure comparison, we have that. I mean, that's a positive. Absolutely, you can do that. Capacity planning benefits. No, out of the box, it doesn't give you that. I mean, if you look at your utilization of existing estate, you can get to that. The financial benefits of innovation, per the Glenn Gore talk, it certainly doesn't capture that. The benefits of your people being available to do other things rather than capital refresh programs, it doesn't really do that. Workforce productivity, we have a level of representation in there around the benefits of automation for infrastructure management, but really underplays it, particularly around developer productivity. Application-centric TCO, certainly not. and then this cost to achieve number. So there's no reflection of, the cost in terms of application migration, in terms of platform build, and in terms of change management. None of these things are factored into our online TCO calculator, which really, if you have a CFO or a CIO who holds the budget really tight and looks at everything through an ROI lens, you need all of these things factored in, and you need to be able to get to a commitment around those. And obviously your legacy constraints, whether that be data center investments, assets that aren't fully depreciated, or third-party contracts. So why do a mass migration? Yeah, so the first thing is, I think we all agree that if we were starting from scratch now, we wouldn't build what we have today. I mean, we're all kind of prisoners of the past to an extent. We've inherited something that's been given to us, and from a blue sky perspective, and if we were a startup or born in the cloud enterprise, we would do things an awful lot differently. But we are where we are, and I think one of the things Amazon is being more and more aware of is that it's not just a matter of consuming services. There are legacy constraints that we need to deal with. So the first thing, utility pricing model, everybody wants that across their entire technology stack, not just infrastructure. They want reduced maintenance costs. If you look at a standard IT budget, or any of the ones I look at, 70% of that budget is spent standing still on maintenance. So really, is that a good use of your time? Really, are you going to be the best friend of the CEO or the business unit leaders if the majority of your resources are just standing still? Everybody wants an access to an innovation platform, of course. Direct cost control to the business. Often we see this issue around where there's a book value and a market value of assets, and there's a gap there, and people are always trying to close that gap and figuring out how to get out the hole that they're in. And then you have, we want to use the platform for future cost savings. So moving on to AWS is not the end of the journey, it's often the start. You use that as a platform then to embrace other cost saving opportunities. And then obviously you want to eliminate technology debt and the risk associated with running the environment as you're running it today. So am I ready for a mass migration? We often kind of get asked for this. So, where do I need to get to in terms of capability and skill set and use of AWS services to be able to fully embrace and go after a mass migration? So this is not a rule of thumb or exact science for everybody, but this is typically what we see. Year one, year two, you're probably not ready. You're still getting up to speed on the platform. You're still testing concepts. You're still growing your competency, and also you're growing your comfort around the platform. But then in year three, if you have production workloads, you've got people trained, you've got enterprise agreements in place, things like that, then you probably are in a place where you want to potentially go and look at making a big bet on AWS. And then from there, as I said, it's not the end of the journey. There's many other things you can do to move yourself further up that curve, as I showed in an earlier slide. So the challenges, again, sufficient data. One of the things we really struggle with, and you'll see as we move towards the services we announced yesterday, like application discovery service, etc., we are cognizant that getting data around your legacy environment is often a challenge, and we often get stuck in infinite loops with customers who just can't get their hands around the data, so don't know what the business case looks like, and then get stuck in this infinite loop of analysis paralysis and don't end up doing anything. Some costs I talked about earlier, uncertainty. So the patterns around how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, haven't been there. This is obviously cloud, still relatively new, particularly in the enterprise. So over 2 years ago, our professional service team, when just starting, probably weren't aware of all the different nuances. But over the last couple of years, working with the likes of GE, we've certainly developed a lot more certainty around what that looks like. Lack of clarity. Short-term cost spike, you've probably all seen this. You've got the old world and you've got the new world, and you're trying to figure out how you balance those books when trying to figure out what that looks like. And then you've got cash constraints. So people often, are reluctant to spend the money. It's easier just to upgrade than move on to AWS. But I think the first thing is acknowledge there's a problem and then try and fix it. And we definitely know that that's a challenge, and we're definitely committed or trying to pursue how we can help you address those challenges. So where can we help? So data discovery tooling, obviously I spoke about that. The application discovery service we talked about. Our professional services teams are developing discovery workshops and discovery accelerator programs where we can go in and help you uncover the data around your environment. A full benefits assessment via AWS Value Engineering. So we have just launched a value engineering competency where we're trying to move the conversation beyond infrastructure as a service. I mean, you'll see from the keynote over the last 2 days, to refer to the AWS platform right now as infrastructure as a service really underplays the breadth and depth of the platform. So what we're trying to do is broaden how we view value under some of those categories I showed you earlier. Thirdly, professional services competency is growing all the time. So obviously we have our cloud adoption framework, the CAF, which each of our professional services consultants has a goal around developing IP to put in there. And as part of that, we have a migration methodology. And then as part of that, we're also developing transformation cost estimates depending on the migration route that you decide to take. And then finally, tailored AWS and partner investment programs. So if you are one of the customers I showed in year 3 and you are interested in pursuing a mass migration, I'd just encourage you to talk to your account manager, professional services contact, and see how we can help accelerate your move on that journey. So before I hand over to Ben, I just wanted to show you an example of something that came out of a live customer example of a global bank that I worked on. So when we do look at the route to take, it's not, as I said, just let's move to the cloud. There are a lot of different decision points that need to make. So first two being retain or retire. So it's not a good candidate for AWS, or it doesn't make financial sense to move it to AWS, or it's something that we're going to retire soon and let's leave it where it is. From R3 to R6 is really the migration approach you decide to take based on the application and the uses of that application, how strategic it is for you as a business. And obviously the level of investment for a rehost versus a full re-architecture is a lot less, but the benefits associated with that migration are also contingent. So we've started to develop with professional services investment parameters around each of those 4 buckets, and also benefit categories around each of those 4 buckets. And we can help frame that for you in your environment as part of that application discovery phase. So I'll hand over to Ben now, who's going to talk a bit around the GE story and how, as I said, it moved from an experiment to a big bet. Thanks, Ben. Cheers.
Thanks, Connor. So thanks, Connor, and good afternoon, everybody. I want to start by just saying that GE is the digital industrial company, and it's an honor to be here with you today to talk about our company as well as our cloud journey. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of our businesses to start. We operate in virtually every industrial segment. We build and service everything from jet engines and aviation to locomotives and transportation to MRIs and ultrasound machines in GE Healthcare, and of course, lighting, which is an integral part of our heritage. But just to underscore the evolution of GE as a company, our lighting business has been completely transformed to focus on things like contemporary intelligent lighting that is capable of complex video processing, edge analytics that drive outcomes for intelligent cities across the globe, including parking optimization, optimizing traffic patterns, and optimizing public safety. My own journey in GE has afforded me stops at most of these industrial verticals along the way. I'm often asked why I stay at GE, and this is the reason. The sheer scale of what we do provides unlimited potential to solve problems at scale that most enterprises can only dream about. We have over 350,000 employees moving into 2016, $149 billion in revenue. We operate in over 170 countries, and our roots date back 138 years to the Edison Electric Light Company that was formed in 1878. Our IT footprint is sprawling as a result of continuous acquisition, integration, and divestiture. We have 32 data centers worldwide, over 90,000 servers. We have 9,000 applications and another 3,000 enabling tools. To date, we've completed over 1,000 application migrations to the cloud. We have roughly 10,000 IT employees, and every year we spend over $3 billion on IT. As our CIO, Jim Fowler, announced at AWS reInvent, we have a target to reduce those 32 data centers to 4 a target to reduce our application count by 40%, and move everything but what is most critical, IP to GE, to public cloud. When I look back at 2015 was the most transformative year in GE history. We announced a new Tier 1 P&L, GE Digital, which combined our internal IT services portfolio and really a Silicon Valley startup. We created a software center in San Ramon, California. In March, in the spring of 2015, we made the decision to divest GE Capital. And GE Capital was previously 60% of our revenue. Due to its recent SIFI designation, we decided to shed that business and refocus on our industrial portfolio. In November of last year, we completed one of the largest acquisitions in GE history, which was Alstom Power, a $13 billion acquisition. We began to focus on IT and OT convergence, and you see the quote from our chairman, Jeff Immelt, there on the left. If you went to bed last night as an industrial company, you're going to wake up this morning as a software and analytics company. For us, what that means is, we're focused on a combination of IT and OT convergence programs, things like Brilliant Factory, creating a new software platform for the industrial internet, which is our Predix platform. And every enterprise feels the threat and the risk of cyber attacks. It's particularly acute when you're talking about jet engines, right, or turbines, or a potential disruption in the global oil supply, nuclear technologies. Jim Fowler, our GE CIO, would tell you it's his biggest fear, and it's what keeps him up at night. Finally, cloud. It wasn't new in 2015. This is a journey that we started almost 4 years ago. But velocity, inevitability, and capability were absolutely very new in 2015. So this transformation has really led to a refocused IT strategy centered around 3 pillars: GE for GE, GE for our customers, and GE for the world. So GE for GE is really about driving internal productivity. I mentioned Brilliant Factory. It's driving productivity on our shop floors and our manufacturing operations. With a model-based enterprise, we're driving wing-to-wing lifecycle management of products, starting with a digital twin, a digital representation of our assets and products that we can monitor in the field to optimize service productivity as well as manufacturing productivity. In the GE for customer space, we've built a new platform, which is the Predix platform. And it's our platform that really combines physical engineering capability and knowledge with analytics and data science. And the idea is to reduce unplanned downtime and improve operations for our customers. We have over 40 targeted industry applications that have been developed and built on Predix. And just to give you an example of sort of the power of what industrial internet means to us, as we think about outcomes for our customers, we talk about the power of 1%. The power of 1% being, if I can optimize a locomotive on the track and increase mileage per hour by just 1 mile per hour, we can save our customers hundreds of millions of dollars. Similar examples for jet engines. If I can maintain additional time on wing for a jet engine, we can save airlines hundreds of millions of dollars. GE for the world is really focused on monetizing our industrial platform as a service. So working with partners in ISVs like Intel and Cisco, we can leverage pieces of that platform like our Predix machine, which has edge analytics capability, as well as a secure gateway, to allow third parties and as well as customers monetize their solutions and provide their customer solutions. We will be a $15 billion software business by 2020. We already have a target of $6 billion in 2016. We just released our first quarter earnings for 2016, and that included $1.2 billion in digital revenue. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit now that you have some background about GE and really talk about our cloud journey. And I'm going to start with the overall GE cloud journey. It really began for us in earnest at the end of 2013, when our then GE CIO, Jamie Miller, challenged us to figure out what opportunity cloud presented to GE. We took a slightly different approach, and something that, looking back on it, we think was very creative and very innovative. Certainly turned out well for us. But we took 50 application candidates to migrate to the cloud, representation from each one of our businesses. So for instance, in oil and gas, we took 8 applications. And we co-located everyone that was going to be working on moving these applications with our technical team and our corporate cloud team. We co-located them in Glen Allen, Virginia. Most of them had had no experience operating in the cloud at all. And we were able to successfully migrate 8 applications for oil and gas. So I spent about 2 years in the oil and gas business and began this journey to the cloud in oil and gas. With those first 8 applications, we measured 30% savings. We forecast another 20% because knowing that we moved those first 8 without any background or experience or skill sets in the cloud, we knew that we had opportunities for further optimization. So we took the TCO savings and that forecast of optimization, we built a business case. We took a look at our overarching oil and gas portfolio. We broke our applications down by high, medium, and low complexity, sort of gave them a peanut butter cost average per application. And we built a business case and we took that back to our corporate team. And we said, please give us money. We want to migrate 50% of our portfolio to the cloud. They said yes, and they gave us $14.2 million to move 400 applications to the cloud. And when we started, the first 6 months were really slow progress. So we found that we had missing foundational services. We certainly had missing skills in our teams. All of these things slowed us down, but we built those in parallel as we identified the need. And in parallel with continuing to move applications. We sent 50 people from oil and gas for training in Seattle. We augmented with AWS professional services. We ramped up our GE vendor skills as we continued to build these services and move applications. So one of the principles that we had as a program was really measure everything. And so we did. We measured at various intervals of time as we went through this 18-month program to validate what our raw ledger savings would be. So line level detail for assets that we were able to decommission or savings that we could find by further simplification of the environment left behind after we moved applications to the cloud. We took various TCO snapshots at different points in time. And then finally, as we look at 2016 and beyond, this cycle of experimenting, creating a business case, executing on that, and continuing to measure progress is being repeated by many businesses in GE. So I'm going to drill down into the oil and gas use case, which is where I spent the first 2 years of the cloud journey. Oil and gas really set the pace for the rest of the company. So as we moved about halfway through 2015, out of the 500 plus applications that were moved across GE, over half of them were moved by oil and gas. Like I said before, the first 6 months we didn't realize all the services that we were going to need. Things as basic as backup and recovery, or synthetic monitoring, for example. So we spent the first 6 months really focused on building core services and automation. We invented something called the Cloud Migration Party, which was an opportunity to pull our functional owners, our application owners, and our technical resources together for co-location and speed to move apps with singular focus. This has resulted in amazing progress on multiple accounts. Not only did we transform our business, we had significant financial benefit. We've driven $14 million of year-over-year cost out with a ramp as we built those core services that finally hit steady state. Now, as we've moved most of the low-hanging fruit, what we see is that we're starting, and we've built the capability to move more complex workloads and applications, but the savings still haven't really tapered off. They remain pretty much at steady state because that's where our dollars are spent on those more critical and complex applications. I tried to map some of the benefits that we've experienced to the categories that Connor showed you earlier. And I want to just say for the record that, you know, that guy jumping off of the cliff, that picture that Connor had, that was me 2.5 years ago. And I never thought that I would be standing here looking at these metrics that you see. It was a huge leap of faith. But I think after a very relatively short period of time, we've been able to deliver really, really massive impact. So if I think about the business agility metrics and what we've achieved, we're able to deliver applications now in oil and gas almost 80% faster. So this is a 6-month cycle time that was generally typical to deliver a business app. Now we can deliver in 6 weeks. We give our engineering teams the ability to rapidly experiment by spinning up workloads and POCs in AWS versus on physical infrastructure. We've been able to reduce obsolescence and technical debt. Whether that's N-4 or N-3, our minimum requirement is to get to N-1 in AWS, and in most cases we're driving currency of that tech stack. It's provided us the ability for streamlined merger and acquisition activity. We saw this as a huge benefit due to the number of smaller acquisitions we were doing in oil and gas. We were able to integrate those acquisitions much more quickly in AWS than trying to bridge the gap with those acquired companies' data centers. From an operational resilience point of view, we had a 98% reduction in P1 and P0s. So you can probably guess what those are. But those are critical business impactful events, outages that prevent us from shipping product or recognizing revenue. In oil and gas, we had seen one every business day. We averaged one every business day. We would generally see on the order of 20 to 25 every month. Throughout the duration of this program, we had, and this was for all 311 applications in AWS, a total of 3. And those 3 were not a direct result of any outage in AWS. They were really our fault. We've seen an improved security posture. We built 15 cloud services that helped us to go faster, that were driven by automation and self-service. Our customers told us over and over again that they saw improved performance with the workloads that we moved. And then the icing on the cake was really cost avoidance, right? We saw 52% average TCO savings. And the way that we measured those was really at an infrastructure as a service level. It was a comparison to our most competitive internal offering. And it was measured at consistently at different points in time over the life of this 18-month program. We, like most enterprises, have engagements for solution architects, for new applications that we're deploying or new solutions that we're deploying. What we were able to measure there was really an 80% cloud-first adoption. So they saw, our customers felt all the benefits in the cloud, and they asked us specifically to go and build their solution in AWS to see the same benefits. From a workforce productivity standpoint, we built what we call the bot army. So we have a bot army in oil and gas. We have a corporate bot army that is focused on automating commodity tasks, which drove a lot of productivity for us from an operational point of view. I talked about those first 8 applications that we moved to the cloud. Those first 8 applications, we had 5 operations resources in oil and gas. With 311 applications in the cloud, we still had 5 operational resources in the cloud. So you've got to focus on automation and certainly self-service to continue to drive that productivity and not have to add resources as you're moving apps. We had 8 cloud migration parties. We were able to dramatically shift our culture to one of self-service, so our application owners could schedule downtime for their applications when they weren't in use. One of the things that I challenged the team to do from the very beginning was, why can't we shut off workloads? Particularly ones that were only consumed when our customers were in the office working. Why don't we run them from 8 to 5 and shut them down for the rest of the time? We see DevOps in practice now, not just within our application teams, but with our functional owners and the entire IT organization in oil and gas. And then the operational cost reduction, you know, we talk about 35% reduction in compute assets. When we started this journey, we had close to 3,200 servers. We were able to eliminate almost 792 of them. We eliminated 50 applications just because we started looking at our portfolio. And it was very deep introspection to figure out what could move to the cloud. We found a lot of waste. The net result is a really simple formula. Right? It was $14.2 million of investment, stretched over an 18-month program. Focus and rigor equals 311 apps in the cloud and $14 million of year-over-year impact. I've shared this many times too, which is sort of the high-level lessons learned. If I had to go back to day one, I would certainly agree with applying these lessons early on. First, automate, then automate some more. Without automation, you're not going to drive that operational productivity that is so important. Embrace Agile. One of the things that we did was we actually structured our team along with 9 products. We built a backlog. We pretended like this cloud migration journey was just like building software. And it was Amazon that helped us figure out that move to an Agile methodology, and it really helped us along the way. We're focused on work instead of workflow. We're focused on execution instead of pressing the button for an infinite number of approvals. We're leveraging the security that's available in AWS, knowing that a network perimeter is no longer sufficient to protect our workloads. We believe that AWS is a safer environment than the way that our applications are deployed in our internal data centers today. We have a bias toward action. I can't tell you how many times I've heard a limitless number of excuses, which is business risk, no one really knows my application anymore, so I don't want to touch it because it's not broken and it's still working. You know, our job is to figure out and explain and educate our customers around the hundreds of reasons why it's more important to move to the cloud and the benefits they'll see from doing that. Take risks. You know, I jumped off the cliff, and that's the reason that, you know, we were able to realize a lot of these benefits. Sometimes it is a little bit of a leap of faith. That first cycle of rapid experimentation, it feels uncomfortable. But I think we've demonstrated it is absolutely worth it. Collaboration is key for all of your stakeholders. Particularly important for us was embedding security and risk teams into the process from day one. It was a huge accelerator for us, driving also top-down leadership as well as bottoms-up capability. The transformation, and this is one of the most important things for me, when I joined oil and gas, our technical team were actually a lot of project managers, and they hadn't exercised their technical skills in a long time. We encouraged them to rebuild those technical skills, and it's brought them a lot of value along the way. Building and maintaining a pipeline is also important. For lots of reasons, there will be applications in your pipeline that can't move at a given point in time. Having others to draw from will help you maintain consistent velocity. And then lastly, cloud aware. So this is a philosophical argument that we certainly had in GE, and I hear it all the time. Moving anything to AWS requires a little bit of refactoring. I would contend, though, that rehosting is okay if it maximizes margin, agility, resilience, and performance. I've been in operations for 10 years. I will also contend that operational purity is more important than architectural purity. With that, I'd like to say thank you. It's an honor to have had an opportunity to speak to you today, and I'll turn it back over to Connor.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks, Ben. What an amazing story. You know, it's just a pleasure. I think all of you will agree to be here and hear that from the horse's mouth, so to speak, rather than from, you know, someone from Amazon. I mean, to hear it from a customer, and certainly a customer of the scale of GE. I mean, some of the standouts for me obviously are, you know, 52% pure infrastructure as a service TCO savings without any financial benefit associated with the 77% improvement in time to market, the 98% reduction in these P1s and P0s. I mean, I think if you were to put a financial number, which I'm sure you could have done if you'd invested the time, it wouldn't have been a good use of your time, but I'm sure you could have done, that number would be far, far greater than that, which really I'm trying to tie back to the opening conversation. I think the other key point that stands out to me is there's an element of, you know, controlled experimentation here. So moving the 8 apps and the learnings from that to drive then a broader remit across the organization. And, you know, and that will to do it, not that reasons why I can't do it. The reasons are how will I overcome the reasons I can't do it. So I think, you know, so many learnings there. And, you know, again, GE, 140 plus years old organization, grown through acquisition, huge amount of outsourcing historically, huge amount of technical IP sitting outside the 4 walls of GE. So every reason you could think of to not do a scale migration to the cloud exists at GE. So the questions a question we all should ask, and I don't think it's too leading a question for me to ask, is if GE can do it, why can't I do it? I mean, that's the obvious question for me that comes off the back of that story we just heard from Ben. So just to wrap up, I mean, yes, you know, it's not just GE. I mean, this is happening. You know, as I've said, we talk a lot around there being no compression algorithm for experience when we talk about AWS and the growth of AWS in terms of our regional expansion. But that also applies to our professional services team. I mean, our professional services team are on the front line here every day, working with our largest customers across the globe, building IP and moving applications of all shapes and sizes into the cloud, and with that comes learnings. And I think, you know, there is an opportunity as fast followers to embrace those learnings and take advantage of those to take a big step. You know, and I think the pace, the pace or velocity, as we often talk about. I mean, there is an opportunity as well to increase the pace of migration, you know, under the right controlled manner by taking these learnings. So again, we are trying to streamline the processes: Snowball, AWS Database Migration Service, Application Discovery Service. You know, things are happening. A migration factory to help you to, you know, under a controlled environment, accelerate where possible. So the other thing, you know, I think I spoke about this briefly at the outset, but when we talk about the migration to AWS from a cost perspective, you know, there's that initial step change, not in the cloud, in the cloud. And there's no doubt, no question there are benefits there. Whether that's right sizing, whether that's embracing, you know, the greatest instance sizes, etc. But really all that is, that's day one. From there, you've got so many options around how you can completely transform not just your cost base, but your IT environment from top to bottom. So whether it's moving to off proprietary licensing databases to Aurora, whether it's moving to open source, whether it's moving to trying to get your corporate application footprint onto an as-a-service pricing model rather than a traditional proprietary licensing model, potentially through the AWS marketplace, whether it's embracing workspaces for your VDI offering. And even to the right of that there, you can talk about services like Lambda. I mean, what would Lambda do to that 30%? I mean, so all I'm saying is, you're on, at least then you're on the right track. So yes, there is a financial ROI view that you have to take, and I'm sure your key stakeholders do take, but there's also a longer term view here around what you can do going forward once you sit on AWS. So what are the characteristics of a mass migration? So I think there's a couple of things. Obviously 200 plus applications, I think, as a minimum, probably in terms of what we would call a mass migration. Strong executive sponsor you need we've seen this, and I think it stands testament to the G story as well. You need strong sponsorship from the top to get this done. It's not easy. No one says it's easy, but the benefits are undoubtedly there. Production workloads on AWS already, so you need capability for sure. Security and compliance on the journey. So we heard about skunkworks yesterday in the keynote, and we heard about black ops and things like that. That can happen, but not for a mass migration. You need to have a cross-functional team. At Amazon, we talk about co-located, and again in the GE story, but cross-functional two pizza teams, and you need to have the key stakeholders, whether that's legal, risk, compliance, security, involved in this to make this successful. And then you need to have appetite. You need to have appetite not just at an executive level, but right down at the delivery level to make this a reality. So what could a potential mass migration exercise look like? So certainly we're open to doing migration planning workshops to talk you through our process, to expose some of our IP, and to talk through where we've done it before. From there, there's typically a joint assessment and discovery phase where we look for not your entire estate, but probably a subset of your estate. And then from there, we decide on whether we should commence with that initial migration, probably move a small subset of your apps initially, and from there use those learnings to kind of go wide into multiple migration sprints, leveraging our migration factory methodology. And obviously involved in that, you have a professional services practice, you have our partner network, and I think, as the GE story, again, if you listen to that, there's a real need to build internal capability around this. So, and any successful long-term cloud migration and future state operation, you will need internal resources probably to build up to run that in the future. So some closing thoughts. I mean, just to wrap up again, I spoke about the Jim Fowler statement earlier. That again, if GE can do it, I think many other organizations face similar challenges. What is it that makes GE different? The patterns, no question, we're in a better position than we were 2 years ago in terms of patterns for success here. We have real learnings from the front line that we can use to help the next wave of customers who want to do a mass migration. Cloud is not a commodity, that's absolutely for sure. Capital One talked about we're more secure in our public data center, but we've got we're more secure in AWS than we are in our own data center, but we've got thousands of developers embracing the platform natively. So you can have speed and you can have security. They're not mutually exclusive. But to do that, you need to embrace the platform natively. And finally, zero infrastructure, everything as a service. So I stole a PwC strapline here of one of their recent reports, but I really like it because I think at Amazon we talk about thinking big, and this is a think big statement. And if I said that a year, 2 years ago, people would look at me going, "You're crazy." But as you listen more and more now, there's a mindset around how do we get out of the data center business? How do we move away from having owned infrastructure and the cost and all of the risk associated with that? So that's it, really. Just to close it again, I'd like to thank Ben for not just for this session, but for the whole week. Ben has been doing his day job from 3 a.m. till about 8 a.m. and then he's been in here meeting customers, doing the exec summit, meeting partners. So really, from everybody at AWS, really appreciate your time for coming down and seeing us down here this week. And thank all of you for coming along and lasting until the end of the session. Please take advantage of the training and please give us feedback. We're really keen to hear feedback, obviously, on this session and what you'd like to see more of. Please come and talk to us at the Voice of the Customer booth after this. And yeah, thanks very much and look forward to speaking to you all soon. Cheers.